This park has always felt kind of wrong to me. Not in a bad way, but in a way I can't fully explain. Because every time I come here, I get this weird feeling like something isn't lining up. You're walking around in the hot Florida sun, sweating, in a bathing suit, but everywhere you look, it feels like you should be freezing. There's snow piled up on the roofs, icicles hanging over buildings, an entire mountain covered in what looks like ice. And somehow, your brain just starts to buy into it. Like for a second, you actually feel like you're somewhere cold, and then you touch the ground, and it's hot, and it snaps you out of it. And that back and forth, that weird sensory confusion, that's what makes this place feel so different from any other park I've ever been to. Because Blizzard Beach isn't just a water park. It's built on this idea that a ski resort somehow existed in Florida and then melted, which already doesn't make any sense. But the way they've created it, it almost tricks you into believing it for a second. And the longer you're here, the more little things you notice that feel slightly off. Not enough to ruin anything, but just enough to stick with you. And once you start noticing them, you can't really stop. This might actually be one of the most unique parks Disney has ever built. And I don't even mean that in a typical way. Because on the surface, Blizzard Beach is just a water park. Slides, lazy river, wave pool, nothing crazy. But the more time you spend here, the more you start to notice little things that feel off. Not bad, just strange. And it's hard to explain at first, because I actually really like this park, a lot. But there's this underlying feeling the whole time you're here that something about it doesn't fully make sense. And I think it all starts with the theme. The entire park is built around this idea that a ski resort somehow existed in Florida and then melted, which already doesn't make any sense. And instead of removing it, they just turned it into a water park. So technically, everything you're walking through isn't supposed to be here anymore. It's like you're exploring the remains of something that should have disappeared. And I think that's where that weird feeling starts. Because everything looks like a cold mountain environment, but you're standing in the Florida heat in a bathing suit, and your brain doesn't really know how to process that. The very convincing and immersive nature of the fake snow and ice on the park created a very weird state of sensory confusion each time I visited this park. After being on a long vacation in the hot Florida sun, I almost felt disorientated by the contrast between the visuals of the park and the heat I was experiencing. It's hard to describe this feeling, but I couldn't help feeling slightly on edge, as though I should be freezing in my bathing suit, but I wasn't. And that feeling never really goes away. Even just walking around, everything looks cold. The roofs have snow melting off the edges. There are fake icicles hanging over doorways. Signs look like they're half frozen and warped. But then you sit down on a chair or step on the ground and it's hot. And it messes with you more than you'd expect. Something about this park has always seemed magical to me. Even though I know the snow is fake, I feel like I'm constantly being tricked into second-guessing myself. Just seeing all of the snow theming seems to somehow create a physical response, as if I was actually in a mountain environment. And I think that's what makes this place feel so different from other Disney parks. Because usually, Disney worlds feel believable. This one doesn't. And that's kind of the point. Then there's the chairlift, which is one of the strangest things in the entire park. You're literally riding a ski lift over a water park, just floating over people in swimsuits, tubes drifting through the lazy river, lifeguards blowing whistles below you. And it's quiet up there. You just hear the cable humming and the occasional splash from below. And it feels like you accidentally ended up in the wrong place. Like this ride belongs on a mountain somewhere, not here. But at the same time, it works perfectly here. And that's kind of the theme of this whole place. Nothing really makes sense, but somehow it all works. Even the main mountain, Mount Gushmore, feels weird when you actually think about it. It looks like this massive, snowy peak, but when you're standing at the base of it, you start to notice it's too smooth, too perfectly shaped, water constantly spilling out of places that don't feel natural. It's basically a giant structure hiding everything inside. And once you realize that, you can't really unsee it. You're not looking at a mountain, you're looking at something pretending to be one. But then again, everything here is pretending to be something else. Having grown up skiing at a very young age, this park resonates with me in a deep way. Not only is this park nostalgic for me, having visited as a child, the mountain and skiing theming enhances this nostalgia due to my deep love of skiing and hiking. And I think that's part of why this place hits so differently, because it feels familiar, but also completely wrong at the same time, like a memory that's been slightly altered. And then there are the little details that most people don't even notice, like the lazy river. Most of it is warm and relaxing like you'd expect. But then you hit this one cave section and the water suddenly gets colder. Not freezing, but just enough to make you notice it immediately. And it's dark in there for a second. You hear the water echoing off the walls, and then you come back out into the bright sun again. It's such a small thing, but it sticks with you. There are also these random quiet corners of the park. Places where you walk 5 minutes away from the main slides, and suddenly there's almost nobody around. Just empty chairs, a few melting snowbanks, and the sound of water in the distance. Which is not something you expect at Disney. It almost feels like you found a part of the park you weren't supposed to. Then there's the ground itself. In some areas it's soft and cool. In others it's rough and hot from sitting in the sun all day. So even just walking around barefoot, the feeling constantly changes. And again, your brain doesn't really know how to process it. Then you look up and see Summit Plummet. Placed on the side of the mountain, it looks incredibly intimidating. The way it looks like guests will fly off a ramp creates a creepy illusion that any rider will perish. The mist that shoots off the slide was almost a dark and scary feature that freaked me out as a child, even though I knew riders were safely going down the slide to the bottom. People standing at the top look tiny, and every once in a while, you just see someone disappear into the mountain. And then a second later, you hear the splash at the bottom. It feels more extreme than it probably should, like it doesn't fully belong in the same place as everything else. This park also gives me a strange, stressful feeling, but in an exciting way. For me, the fact that all of the snow is melting creates some questions and concerns. How will the park look when all the snow is melted? How will the slides and pools function when all of this melting water is no longer available? Is this just a temporary situation and this park is doomed to dry up and fail? I know these are totally irrational questions, but somehow these thoughts still come to mind as I explore this park. While it may sound crazy, this feeling of concern for the park's future, while totally irrational, still creates a unique sense of immersion each time I visit. And then there's one of the strangest things I remember from being a kid. Mogul mania, or at least what I thought was Mogul mania. I also find the aspect of Mogul mania being removed to be very intriguing and nostalgic in a weird way. I'm almost positive that a VHS Disney promotional video I had as a child featured clips of this ride with kids bouncing down the mogul field in tubes. I watched this video at least 50 times at a young age before my first visit. And then I got here, and it wasn't there. And that stuck with me for a long time. It's such a small thing, but it adds to this feeling that Blizzard Beach is slightly disconnected from reality. Like even your own memories of it don't fully line up. This park has always seemed so surreal to me, like it exists in a different universe where the rules of snow and ice have been altered. And I think that's the best way to describe it. It doesn't feel like a normal place. It feels like something in between. Not fully a ski resort, not fully a water park, just this weird hybrid that somehow works. I could just walk around this park for hours and be entertained by the strange feeling of sensory confusion this park gives me. And honestly, that might be the best part about it. It's not just about the rides, it's about how it feels to be there. Because even though everything is fake, it still manages to create this weird mix of feelings. Confusion, nostalgia, slight stress, and somehow comfort at the same time. And that's where the magic of this park really comes from. Not because it's perfect, not because it makes total sense, but because it creates a feeling you don't really get anywhere else. So yeah, Blizzard Beach is a great water park, but more than that, it's one of the only places I've ever been where being there feels just as interesting as anything you actually do. If you made it this far, I've got a few things I actually use at parks linked below, including a non-toxic sunscreen that I didn't get burned using once. They're all at the top of the description if you want to check them out.